So, what if I told you that the absolute blueprint for today's data-driven, click tracking, algorithm-obsessed internet economy, what if I told you it wasn't dreamed up in some Silicon Valley garage?
Which is, I mean, that's what everyone just assumes, right?
Exactly. But what if it was actually written over a century ago?
Mhm.
And what if the architect of this whole hyper-modern digital world we live in, the guy who essentially laid the track for everything online today, actually started his career selling, like, carpet sweepers and canned beans?
I mean, it does sound like a historical paradox, honestly, but it's entirely accurate.
Yeah.
I think most people just assume that the really granular, hyper-targeted marketing we see everywhere today is just a byproduct of the internet age.
Right, like it was invented by Facebook or something.
Exactly. But the reality is every single time you click a personalized coupon code or, every time you pause on a targeted headline in your feed or sign up for one of those risk-free trials for some software platform.
Oh, yeah, those are everywhere.
Right. You are basically living in a world built by one man's absolute obsession with human psychology and measurable results.
The analogy that just keeps coming to my mind as I look through these sources we're doing our deep dive on today, it's like space travel.
Space travel. Okay, I like that. How so?
Well, when you look at a modern digital marketer or a YouTube creator or a startup founder trying to scale a business right now, they are essentially modern astronauts.
Right.
They have all the fancy technology, right? They've got the AI analytics,
Yeah.
the massive real-time dashboards, complex funnel mapping software, all of it.
All the shiny bells and whistles.
Exactly. But the material we are diving into today, it's like discovering the underlying physics of gravity that makes their flight possible in the first place.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Because, I mean, you can have the best spaceship in the world, but if you don't understand gravity, you're going to crash.
You're just flying blind.
Exactly. So today's deep dive is focused on two definitive works, My Life in Advertising and Scientific Advertising, and both of these were written by Claude C. Hopkins.
Claude Hopkins. Yeah, the legend.
And let me assure you right out of the gate, for anyone listening, these are not dry, dusty academic textbooks. I mean, as one of the forwards in our source material put it, these books are just dished up, dripping with life.
They really, really are dripping with life. And I think to understand the sheer gravity of these books, you kind of have to understand Claude Hopkins, the man.
Right.
Because his methodology, it didn't come from some university lecture hall. It was forged in a very, very specific type of fire.
Yeah, the sources detail his upbringing, and it sounds incredibly harsh. I mean, he wasn't born into Madison Avenue royalty.
Oh, far from it.
Yeah.
Not even close. Back in the 1920s, when he was at his peak, Hopkins was making over $100,000 a year working for the Lord and Thomas Agency.
Wait, 100 grand a year?
In the 1920s. Yes. If you adjust that for inflation and the economic context of the time, he was pulling in astronomical wealth, like millions and millions of dollars a year, purely operating as a copywriter and a strategist.
That is just insane, just from writing ads.
Just from writing ads. But his foundation, the environment that shaped his brain, was anything but glamorous. He was raised by a very strict, frugal, Scottish mother.
Right.
And she instilled in him this profound, almost paralyzing conservatism with money. Along with that came an extreme, punishing work ethic.
Yeah, the sources said he supported himself from the age of 9.
Exactly, from 9 years old.
Yeah.
Throughout his early life, he was a preacher, he was a school teacher, a farmhand.
Wow.
And because of that intense background, he viewed a single dime as a massive amount of money. And crucially, and this is what made him so good, he didn't just respect his own dimes. He deeply, deeply respected his clients' dimes.
Which brings me to the elephant in the room here. I imagine a lot of people listening to this are thinking, okay, I'm living in an era of unprecedented information overload. Digital ad costs are skyrocketing. Attention spans are fiercely contested by, short-form video on every app. And everyone is just trying to figure out how to survive in this saturated market.
It's a bloodbath out there.
It really is. So why should I dedicate time to a book written by a guy from the 1920s? Like, what could he possibly know about my reality today?
That is the exact right question to ask. And the answer lies in the specific problem Hopkins was solving in his own time. Because Hopkins existed in an era when advertising was largely seen as a massive gamble.
A gamble?
Yeah, it was, as he called it, a pig in a poke.
No.
Business owners were literally just throwing fortunes at newspaper publishers, crossing their fingers and hoping for the best.
Just praying someone buys.
Exactly. They treated advertising like a vanity project.
Yeah.
Just a way to see their own name in print or just a roll of the dice. There was absolutely no tracking. There was no accountability. And Hopkins looked at that immense waste of capital. And remember his frugal upbringing here, and he was disgusted by it. He completely transformed this chaotic gambling ring into a hard science.
So you're saying the chaos he faced in the 1920s is actually the exact same chaos a founder faces today when they stare at like a Facebook ads manager dashboard and just watch their budget drain away without understanding why?
Precisely. Today, as ad costs soar and all these algorithms shift unpredictably, the fundamental problem hasn't actually changed. Only the medium has.
That makes a lot of sense.
Hopkins' foundational rule that every single dollar spent must absolutely justify itself with a measurable return is actually more urgent now than it has ever been.
Right.
He wrote these books explicitly to save future generations from the midnight groping, as he called it, that he endured.
Midnight groping. I love that phrase.
It's so visceral.
Yeah.
He's been decades blindly feeling around in the dark, trying to figure out what actually makes human beings pull out their wallets. And he documented the laws he discovered so we wouldn't have to start from scratch.
It perfectly describes the feeling of just guessing what your audience wants, right? Which brings us to the central spine of his entire philosophy.
Let's hear it.
Everything we are going to discuss today hangs on this one single punchy thesis. I want to lay it out clearly right now.
Go for it.
Advertising is not an art form. It is not literature. It is not entertainment. It is simply, entirely, and exclusively multiplied salesmanship.
Multiplied salesmanship.
Right.
Yes, that is the immovable cornerstone of his worldview. And what is so striking about that definition is how it fundamentally alters your behavior the second you internalize it.
How so?
Well, because advertising is simply salesmanship, multiplied to millions of people simultaneously, it has to be governed by strict, measurable scientific laws.
Okay.
Think about the stakes. If a traveling salesman makes a mistake in a one-on-one pitch, what happens?
He just loses one sale.
Right. It's a localized failure. No big deal in the grand scheme. But if you make a mistake in multiplied salesmanship, if you print a flawed pitch in a magazine that reaches 2 million people, that single mistake is multiplied millions of times.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It costs you an absolute fortune.
The leverage is terrifying when you put it that way.
It is terrifying. And that's exactly why Hopkins insisted on strict rules, because the leverage is so high, every campaign must be rigorously tested, every claim you make must be highly specific, and the entire focus of the copy must be on offering an altruistic service to the consumer.
Altruistic service, okay.
The campaign can never, under any circumstances, be about stroking the ego of the advertiser or letting the writer show off their fancy vocabulary. It is a strictly commercial transaction designed to move product.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here for a second,
Please do.
because this is where his philosophy crashes head-on into modern culture. His first major rule derived from this thesis is that you have to kill the fine writing.
Yes.
He believed that if you wouldn't say a specific phrase to a customer standing right in front of you, you have absolutely no business putting it in print.
Exactly.
But I mean, I look around today and the ad industry loves fine writing.
We celebrate creativity. Look at the Super Bowl.
Oh, the Super Bowl is the classic example.
Right. We get together at parties specifically to watch clever, highly produced, hilarious mini-movies, and we talk about them for weeks. Isn't advertising supposed to be catchy and entertaining?
We certainly talk about them. But Hopkins would draw a very hard line between generating conversation and generating revenue.
Okay.
Talking about an ad is not the same thing as buying the product. He would counter your Super Bowl argument with a very blunt piece of logic. He said, people do not buy from clowns.
People do not buy from clowns. That is brutal.
It is.
But explain the psychology behind that. Why does a clown push the buyer away?
You have to step into the shoes of the consumer and remember what money actually represents. For the vast majority of people, spending money is a very serious business.
Right. It's their livelihood.
Exactly. A dollar represents a fraction of their labor, their time away from their family, their security. When you use fine writing, flattery, literary language, or overt comedy in your pitch, you are fundamentally shifting the consumer's attention.
From what to what?
Instead of looking at the product and how it solves their problem, they are suddenly looking at the writer. They're looking at the performance.
I see. It reveals the machinery of the pitch.
Exactly. It reveals the hook. When a salesman knocks on your door, if he starts reciting Shakespeare or doing a stand-up routine, what is your immediate physiological reaction?
You put your guard up.
Right. You hold your wallet a little tighter. You become deeply suspicious that this person is trying to distract you from the actual merits of the deal with a song and dance. Fine writing feels artificial. It feels like someone is trying to pull one over on you.
He actually codified this into what he called the $10 a word rule.
Yes, the $10 rule.
He forced himself to look at his writing and imagine that every single word he printed was going to cost him $10, which back then was an astronomical sum.
Huge money.
And honestly, if you're buying premium clicks today, $10 a word isn't far off reality.
That's a great point. It
Yeah.
really isn't.
There's this incredible example in the sources that perfectly illustrates the danger of trying to be an artist instead of a salesman. It was a mail order campaign he was running.
Yes. The mail order example is the perfect distillation of this principle. So, Hopkins had developed a very simple, direct, and frankly, somewhat unattractive ad.
Unattractive.
It wasn't winning any design awards, but it was highly effective. Because he tracked everything, he knew that this ugly little ad was bringing in replies at exactly 42 cents per response. It was a highly profitable machine.
Okay, 42 cents, that's great. And then the ego steps in.
Exactly. Another agency comes along, takes a look at this profitable machine, and decides it simply isn't pretty enough. It doesn't look like art.
Right.
So they convince the client to let them redesign it. They made the ad physically larger, they added beautiful typography, they made the language more alluring and clever. They essentially turned a salesman into a clown.
And what happened to the math?
The math completely collapsed. That new, beautiful, clever ad, the one that probably looked great, framed on the agency's wall, caused the cost per reply to skyrocket from 42 cents to $14.20.
From 42 cents to over $14. They multiplied the cost of acquisition by more than 30 times just by trying to be clever.
Because they forgot they were salesmen. The psychology here is timeless, and it applies to every single medium. When you insert fine art or overly clever phrasing into a transaction, it acts as a barrier.
So it just gets in the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you are scripting a YouTube sponsorship integration or writing an email sequence or designing a landing page, the immediate application is to visualize one single normal prospect standing directly in front of you.
Talks to them.
Talk to them.
Yeah.
Simply, directly, with respect for their time and their money. If you wouldn't use a clever pun while looking a stranger in the eye and asking them for $100, you must hit the backspace key.
But this naturally raises a massive question for me.
Okay, what is it?
If I am stripping out all the cleverness and I'm not allowed to use humor, and I'm strictly acting as a literal salesman, doesn't that make the ad incredibly aggressive?
Wow.
I mean, if I just walk up to someone and bluntly state my case without any charm, aren't I just shouting, "B-U-Y my stuff"? How does a salesman actually close the deal under these constraints?
That is the trap that most amateur direct response marketers fall into. They think removing cleverness means adding aggression.
Right, like those late-night infomercials.
Exactly, but Hopkins solved this through his next major framework. The principle of unselfish service. You do not close the deal by demanding their money. You close it through radical altruism.
Radical altruism in an advertisement. I gotta say, that feels like an oxymoron.
It does sound like one, but Hopkins believed that the single biggest mistake an advertiser can make is saying, "Buy my brand" or "Give me your money." You have to accept a fundamental truth about human nature. Consumers are intensely selfish. And I don't mean that in a moralistic, negative way. I mean it in a purely biological survival sense. A consumer navigating the market only cares about what they get out of the transaction.
So they don't care about the company at all.
Not even a little bit. They do not care about your market share. They do not care that your company is celebrating its 50th anniversary. They do not care that you have investors to pay back.
Right. What's in it for me is the only frequency they broadcast on.
Precisely. So to penetrate that selfish filter, you must present yourself entirely as a servant to their needs.
Serve the consumer.
Yes. The text gives a phenomenal, almost unbelievable example of this with the Van Camp's milk campaign.
Oh, this story is wild.
Let's set the stage for this one. At the time, evaporated milk was a highly competitive market, and most advertisers were taking that aggressive route you mentioned earlier.
The shouting approach.
Right. They were screaming at consumers in bold letters, "Beware of substitutes," or "Insist on the original." They were demanding loyalty.
Which, if you think about it, is a purely selfish demand from the company. It's essentially saying, protect my revenue stream from my competitors.
Exactly. It offers absolutely nothing to the consumer. So Hopkins takes over the Van Camp's account, and he flips the entire industry on its head. He literally runs ads with the headline, Try our rivals too.
Try our rivals too. He's literally telling them to go buy the competition.
He is, but look at the mechanism of how he did it. He didn't just tell them to try the rivals. He offered a coupon in the ad. But this wasn't a standard discount coupon.
What was it?
This coupon allowed the consumer to go to their local grocer, pick up a can of Van Camp's milk, and Hopkins' agency would pay the grocer the full retail price for that can on behalf of the consumer.
Wow.
He essentially said, "We are so confident that our product will serve you best, we will buy your first can for you. Try ours, try theirs, and you be the judge."
Let's break down the psychology of that, because it is deeply manipulative, but in a very elegant, consensual way.
Really is.
Because when a company screams, "Beware of substitutes," the consumer's natural reaction is resistance. We hate being told what to do. We put our guard up. But when a company says, "We trust your judgment completely," what happens?
When you grant someone autonomy, human nature kicks in to justify that trust. You are removing all the friction. You're taking on all the financial risk. The consumer feels indebted to your generosity, and more importantly, they feel respected.
So they want to like your product.
Right. He wasn't demanding a sale. He was offering a risk-free education. And he did the exact same thing with Pepsodent toothpaste later on. He offered a free trial to prove the benefit of the toothpaste, absorbing the massive cost of manufacturing and shipping those trials himself, specifically to eliminate the buyer's risk.
Now, I want to pause on the concept of free, because there is a massive, fascinating caveat in the sources about this.
Oh, the medical caveat, yes.
Hopkins loved offering free trials to prove his altruism. He found that offering a free sample for a food product like the evaporated milk worked brilliantly. But when he tried emphasizing the word free in huge letters for a medicine or a hygienic product, it completely ruined his conversion rates.
It tanked them.
Why would the exact same tactic fail just because the product category changed?
This goes incredibly deep into the psychology of perceived value and authority bias. Why does free work for a canned good, but fail spectacularly for a health product?
Yeah, why?
Hopkins realized that the consumer's mindset is entirely different based on what they're trying to solve. When a consumer is looking for a food product, they're looking for a simple delight. A free sample is viewed as generous hospitality, like a baker handing you a cookie.
Right, you don't question the baker's credentials.
Exactly. But when people are looking for health, hygiene, or beauty, they're not looking for hospitality. They're looking for authoritative science. They're looking for a cure to a deeply personal ailment.
That makes sense.
When you plaster free E in bold letters at the top of an ad for a medical product, you instantly cheapen it. You strip away the authority. You stop looking like a respected, brilliant scientist offering a breakthrough, and you suddenly look like a street peddler, desperately trying to give away worthless snake oil.
Oh, wow.
A doctor doesn't stand on the corner shouting, "Free surgery."
That makes perfect sense. If a doctor offers free surgery, you assume the surgery is going to kill you. You want the surgery that costs a premium because price implies competence.
Precisely. The product was still free. He still wanted them to try it without risk, but he learned he had to change the framing.
How did he frame it?
Instead of a free giveaway, he framed it as a scientific test offered for the user's benefit.
Yeah.
The financial mechanism was identical, but the psychological framing preserved the product's prestige.
I see this exact problem playing out in 2026 with software companies.
Oh, all the time.
Think of all the SaaS platforms offering free tiers. If the product is a simple utility like a basic photo editor or a to-do list, free gets massive signups.
Yeah.
But if you are selling enterprise-grade cybersecurity software that protects a bank's data, if you emphasize free tier, the chief information officer is going to assume your software is garbage. They want to pay for security.
One with the expensive one.
So the application for the listener is crucial here. Frame every offer as a service, but tailor the language of that service to the inherent prestige of what you are selling. Don't cheapen a premium solution by making it sound like a clearance sale.
That is a perfect modern parallel.
Right.
Now, once you have adopted this altruistic posture, once you have framed your offer as a service, you still have to convince them that your product actually works.
Right. You need proof.
You have to prove your claims.
Yeah.
And this brings us to what I consider Hopkins' most brilliant contribution, his absolute war on hype and his championing of extreme specificity.
If there is one thing that has survived from the 1920s to today, it is the plague of hype.
Oh, it's everywhere.
If I see one more pitch deck or one more Kickstarter campaign claiming their product is revolutionary or disruptive or the absolute best in the world, I am going to lose my mind.
It's just white noise at this point.
Total white noise.
Yeah.
How did Hopkins handle this back then? Because surely human nature was dealing with the same exaggeration.
Human nature hasn't changed a bit, and neither have lazy copywriters. Hopkins noted that platitudes and generalities roll off the human understanding, like water from a duck.
Water from a duck.
When an advertiser claims they have the best product or the lowest prices, the consumer immediately discounts it. Superlatives are entirely expected. Every single competitor says they are the best.
So it means nothing.
Because everyone uses the word has been stripped of all its meaning. It is invisible. But specific facts, precise numbers, the human brain treats specificity as truth.
I want to dig into the mechanisms of that. Why does the brain trust a number more than an adjective?
Because a number implies measurement. It implies a process. The sources provide a vivid example regarding a campaign for tungsten lamps. At the time, all the other lamp manufacturers were running ads saying, "Our lamps give more light than older lamps." That is a generality. Hopkins takes over the campaign and he writes, "Our lamps give 3 1/3 times the light of carbon lamps."
3 1/3 times, not 3 times, not 4 times.
Exactly. The fraction is the magic. What is the psychological shift happening in the reader's mind when they read 3 1/3? The reader subconsciously thinks they must have actually measured this in a laboratory to get a fraction that precise.
Wow, yeah.
By using a specific, slightly awkward number, Hopkins essentially borrowed the credibility of the scientific method and applied it to a light bulb ad. If he had said 3 times, it sounds like an estimate. 3 1/3 sounds like a documented fact.
That is incredibly subtle but so powerful. But we have to talk about the absolute best story in the entire source material regarding specificity.
Oh, the brewery story.
Yes, the brewing company story. The text implies it was Schlitz beer. I want to spend some real time on this because it is a masterclass in uncovering hidden value. Let's set the scene here. What was the state of the beer industry when Hopkins entered the picture?
The beer industry at that time was locked in a battle of empty platitudes. Every single brewery in America was spending vast fortunes running massive print ads that essentially just said 2 words.
What were they?
Pure beer.
Over and over again.
Buy our pure beer.
Boring.
It meant absolutely nothing to the consumer. It was the ultimate water off a duck's back scenario.
So Hopkins gets hired to help Schlitz, who was sitting in 5th place in the market at the time. And instead of just trying to write a prettier font for the word pure, he demands to see the factory.
He insists on a tour. He goes to the brewery, and what he sees completely astounds him. He sees rooms filled with plate glass, where the beer is cooled in an environment of highly filtered air to prevent any airborne contamination.
Sounds like a laboratory.
Exactly. He sees massive, expensive pumps going down 4,000 feet into the earth to extract pure artesian water, rather than just using city water.
Okay, what else?
He watches the bottling process and sees that every single glass bottle is cleaned and sterilized with live steam before a single drop of beer touches the glass. He sees a mother yeast cell that was the product of over 1,000 rigorous experiments to find the perfect flavor profile.
So he is walking through this technological marvel of cleanliness and precision, and he turns to the management and asks the obvious question. Why in the world aren't you telling people about this? This is incredible.
Right.
What was their response?
Their response is the classic curse of knowledge. The management looks at him and says, "Well, we can't advertise that. Every good brewery does it that way. It's just standard industry practice to use live steam and filtered air. There's nothing special about it."
And right there is where Hopkins' genius shines. Because management is looking at the process from the inside out. They assume the consumer knows how beer is made, but Hopkins realizes the consumer has absolutely no idea what happens inside a brewery.
Exactly. Hopkins didn't claim that Schlitz was the only brewery using live steam. He didn't claim they were the only ones with artesian wells. He simply realized that because no one else was talking about it, the first person to specifically explain the process to the public would own the concept of purity in the consumer's mind.
That is brilliant.
So he launched a campaign detailing the plate glass rooms, the 4,000-foot wells, the live steam. He didn't say pure beer. He explained the painful, expensive process of creating pure beer.
And the result.
By taking an industry standard and simply being the first to articulate it specifically, he completely dominated the market. He moved Schlitz from 5th place to a tie for 1st place in America in a matter of months.
That is staggering. He won the market not by changing the product, but by revealing the truth of the process.
Revealing the truth.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think about this in terms of writing a modern resume or a LinkedIn profile. If you are hiring someone and their summary says, I am a very hard worker, a strategic thinker, and a great team player. Your brain completely glosses over it.
Pure beer.
It's pure beer. It means nothing. But if their resume says, I increased Q3 outbound sales by 34% in 6 months by restructuring the cold call scripts for a team of 12, they instantly get the interview.
Because it is a definitive, falsifiable claim. If you use vague hype, you are treating your audience like children. You are asking them to take your word for it. But when you use specific facts, you are respecting their intelligence. You are providing them with the raw evidence they need to make an adult decision.
So actionable.
If you audit your own copy right now, your website, your pitch deck, take a red pen, cross out every single adjective, and force yourself to replace it with a hard number, a specific process, or a verifiable fact. It will likely cut your word count in half, but it will multiply your trust factor tenfold.
Okay, so we've stripped out the cleverness. We've framed our offer as unselfish service. We've backed it up with hyper-specific facts.
All right.
But all of this beautifully constructed, highly persuasive copy is completely useless if the prospect scrolls right past it. How do we get them to stop and look? This naturally leads us to the crucial role of the headline.
Yes. The headline is the gatekeeper. And Hopkins had a very specific philosophy about what a headline should do, which flies in the face of a lot of modern clickbait theory.
Oh, clickbait, yeah.
Hopkins did not view headlines as a way to trick the broad masses into reading his copy. He viewed them strictly as a sorting mechanism.
A sorting mechanism. Explain the analogy he uses, because I think it perfectly visualizes the concept.
He compares the headline to a bellboy walking through a crowded, chaotic hotel lobby. The bellboy has a telegram for a specific person. He doesn't walk into the middle of the room and scream, "Hey, everybody, look at me, I have an amazing secret."
Which is what a lot of people do online today.
Exactly. And that would get everyone's attention, sure, but it would be a waste of time because the telegram is only for one person. Instead, the bellboy walks through the crowd simply calling out, "Mr. Jones, message for Mr. Jones."
Yeah.
He only wants the attention of the specific person his message is relevant to. Everyone else can ignore him.
So the headline's job is not to go viral. The headline's job is to hail the specific person whose specific problem your product can solve.
Yes.
This is exactly the thumbnail and title problem on YouTube or the hook on a short-form video. If you make a vague, curiosity-inducing thumbnail that gets millions of clicks from people who don't actually care about your niche, your retention graph plummets, the algorithm punishes you, and you make zero sales.
Exactly. There is a great example in the text regarding an automobile ad. The agency was trying to sell a specific type of car, and they ran a headline that focused heavily on the mechanical engineering of the car's universal joint. The ad completely failed.
Let me guess why. Because the only people who stop to read about a universal joint are mechanics, not people looking to buy a fun car for the weekend.
Precisely. The headline sorted for the wrong crowd. The average driver doesn't care about the physics of the drivetrain. They care about how the car feels and looks. So Hopkins' team changed the headline to "The Sportiest of Sport Bodies."
And what happened?
The body copy underneath remained largely the same, but that new headline pulled 50 to 1 compared to the original. 50 times more responses, simply because they called out Mr. Jones correctly. They hailed the specific desire of the target buyer.
But there is another element to headlines that Hopkins mastered, and it's something we still see driving the internet today. Intense curiosity.
Curiosity is huge.
How does he balance being specific with making people desperately want to know more?
Curiosity is one of the strongest human incentives, but it has to be applied to the product itself, not a random gimmick. When Hopkins took over the marketing for a struggling cereal called Puffed Wheat, he didn't write a boring headline about breakfast nutrition or the caloric value of wheat.
Right.
He looked at the manufacturing process, where the wheat was literally heated in massive pressurized cannons until it exploded. So his headlines were things like, "Foods shot from guns," or 125 million steam explosions caused in every kernel.
Foods shot from guns. I don't care if I'm flipping through a magazine in 1925 or scrolling a timeline in 2026. If I see a picture of cereal and the headline says it was shot from a gun, I am absolutely stopping to read the first paragraph.
And that is the point.
Oh.
He invoked intense curiosity, but the curiosity was directly tied to a specific fact about the product. And he didn't just guess that foods shot from guns would work. This is vital. He tested scores of headlines against each other.
Just swap them out.
Yeah. He would run the exact same advertisement, same specific facts, same unselfish service offer in the body, and he would only change the headline at the top. He documented cases where simply changing those few words multiplied the actual sales returns by 5 or even 10 times.
10 times the revenue just by changing the bellboy's call at the top of the ad? The lesson there is profound. Do not try to appeal to everyone. If you try to appeal to everyone, you appeal to no one. If you are selling a highly technical B2B solution for a specific supply chain problem, call out that specific supply chain manager immediately. Do not use a vague, clever headline hoping to trick a broad audience into reading your niche pitch.
Absolutely. Now let's pivot slightly and look at the emotional tone of that pitch.
Yeah.
When you hail that specific person, what emotional state are you trying to evoke? Hopkins had a very firm stance on this, and it introduces his philosophy of positive psychology.
Positive psychology.
He firmly believed you must sell the cure, not the prevention.
I am so glad we are hitting this point because I want to push back hard here. I hear marketers today constantly saying that fear sells,
They do say that.
and frankly, the evidence seems to support them. Look at the news media. Look at political campaigns. Look at the algorithms driving social media. They heavily prioritize outrage, fear, anxiety, and FOMO, the fear of missing out. Fear clearly drives engagement. So does Hopkins completely disagree with modern reality.
He does disagree, but you have to distinguish between different types of consumption.
Okay.
The news media and political campaigns are selling engagement and ideological loyalty. Hopkins was selling consumer goods and services that cost hard-earned money. And he discovered a deep, unshakable truth about human nature in the commercial marketplace. People will not cross a bridge before they come to it.
What does that mean in practice?
It means they will not buy prevention. Human beings are incredibly bad at assessing long-term risk. They will not spend their limited resources today on a product designed to stop a disaster that might happen 5 years from now.
Interesting.
But they will gladly empty their wallets for a cure to a problem they are suffering from right now, or for an enhancement that promises to make their current life noticeably better tomorrow.
The ultimate proof of this in the sources is his legendary Pepsodent toothpaste campaign. Set the stage for us. What was the fear-based advertising that Pepsodent's competitors were running?
At the time, dental hygiene was not the daily habit it is today, so other toothpaste companies thought the best way to get people to brush was to scare them.
With the rotting teeth.
Exactly. They ran ads showing graphic illustrations of rotting teeth. They warned people about the horrors of pyorrhea, gum disease, and agonizing toothaches. They were essentially saying, buy our toothpaste or your teeth will fall out.
And Hopkins refused to do that.
He absolutely refused. He understood the mechanics of associative memory. He knew that repulsive ideas rarely win converts in commerce. People do not want to dwell on the penalties of life. They want to be shown the rewards.
That makes total sense.
If you make a prospect feel fearful, anxious, or disgusted while they are reading your ad, their brain subconsciously associates those negative, unpleasant emotions with your brand name.
Oh, wow. I never thought of it that way.
So Hopkins took Pepsodent in the exact opposite direction.
Yep. He focused entirely on the positive result.
Yes. He only showed images of highly attractive people with beautiful, gleaming smiles. He didn't talk about rotting teeth. He talked about removing the cloudy film to reveal the natural beauty underneath. He sold beauty. He sold happiness. He sold social acceptance. He sold the desired future state, not the miserable present reality.
And the data backed him up, didn't it? The sources mentioned the specific ROI on this.
The data was overwhelming. When he ran split tests, putting the fear-based prevention ads head-to-head against the positive beauty ads, the positive ads outpulled the negative ones 4-to-1.
Wow.
4 times the sales, simply by showing the sunshine instead of the wrinkles.
That is a staggering margin. So if you are listening to this and you are auditing the emotional core of your messaging, ask yourself, are you focused on the miserable reality of your customer's current problem? Or are you painting a vivid picture of their desired future state? Stop trying to scare them into buying and start inspiring them into buying. Make them associate your brand with their own aspirations.
But this brings us to the absolute bedrock of Hopkins' entire philosophy.
Okay, let's hear it.
We have talked about all these brilliant tactical frameworks, the $10 a word rule, unselfish service, specific facts, targeted headlines, positive psychology. But how did he know any of this was actually true?
Yeah, without the data, he's just another guy with an opinion in a boardroom.
Exactly. How did he know it wasn't just his own confirmation bias? This leads us to the foundation of the book, scientific testing and the mail order model.
Right, because boardroom opinions are exactly what he hated. How did he actually track this stuff in an era before cookies and conversion pixels?
He viewed the mail order advertising business as the ultimate unforgiving school of marketing. In mail order, there's absolutely no room for guessing or vanity. Here is how the mechanism worked. You place an ad in a magazine. Inside that ad is a physical coupon that the reader has to cut out and mail back to you with a check or coins to get the product.
Classic mail order.
But crucially, Hopkins would put a tiny, unique key code on the coupon. For example, the coupon in McClure's magazine might say, "Send to Department 4A," while the identical ad in Munsey's magazine would say, "Send to Department 4B."
Ah, so when the sacks of mail arrived at the warehouse, the clerks could literally tally up exactly how many replies came from each specific magazine, and even from each specific headline variation.
Exactly. It was the analog version of UTM tracking parameters. You divide the cost of the magazine space by the exact number of coupons returned and, down to the fraction of a cent, exactly what a new customer costs. You know which headlines work, which publications work, and which offers fail.
So he took this ruthless, data-driven mail order methodology and he applied it to massive retail brands, which was revolutionary. The text details the Palmolive soap campaign. Explain how he used testing to mitigate risk there.
Palmolive wanted to launch their new soap nationally. A national rollout in newspapers and magazines across the country would have cost an absolute fortune, and if the marketing message was wrong, the company could have faced ruin. It was a massive gamble.
High stakes.
Very high stakes. Hopkins looked at that and said, "Absolutely not. We are not guessing on a national scale. Let's do a localized test."
So where did they go?
They went to one single town, Benton Harbor, Michigan. Hopkins spent exactly $700 on a highly localized newspaper campaign offering a coupon for a free cake of Palmolive soap. He wanted to test the appeal of his specific copy and his unselfish service offer in a contained environment.
Only $700. And because it was tracked locally, he could see the entire life cycle of the customer.
Yes. He didn't just track the initial coupon redemption. He watched the local drugstores to see if the consumers came back to buy a second bar with their own money. And the results were stunning. The repeat sales from those local Benton Harbor drugstores generated enough profit to pay for the initial $700 in newspaper ads before the bills for the ads were even due.
That is the holy grail of marketing. The campaign was entirely self-funding.
Exactly. He took a tiny $700 bet, proved the mathematical validity of the copy, proved that the product had retention, and only then did he scale it nationally. Palmolive went on to become the best-selling toilet soap in the world, built entirely on the back of a $700 local test.
Conversely, testing doesn't just find the winners, it saves you from catastrophic failures. The book details a fascinating Quaker Oats test. Tell us about 2-minute oats.
Oh, this one is great. The executives at Quaker Oats had developed a new product idea, 2-minute oats. They were convinced it was a guaranteed winner. The boardroom was in full agreement. They were ready to throw millions of dollars behind a massive national push.
I can already tell this is going to end badly.
Right. But Hopkins, relying on his rules, insisted they run a small local test first. He went to a few select towns and offered consumers a choice between the heavily favored 2-minute oats and another secondary idea they had called Quick Quaker.
And what did the data say?
The data humiliated the boardroom. 90% of the consumers in the test markets preferred Quick Quaker. For whatever reason, the name, the perceived value, the 2-minute oats flavor just didn't hit right with the actual people buying the oatmeal.
Wow. 90%.
By spending a tiny fraction of their budget on a local test, Hopkins saved the Quaker Oats Company from blowing millions of dollars pushing the completely wrong product to the nation.
It makes me think of the process of doing stand-up comedy.
Stand-up comedy.
Yeah. If you are a comedian, you don't sit in your basement, write an hour of jokes you think are hilarious, and then immediately rent out an arena to film a Netflix special. That would be suicide.
Oh, definitely.
You go to a dingy open mic club on a Tuesday night. You test the jokes on a crowd of 15 people who don't care about you. You see what they actually laugh at. You cut the jokes that bomb. You refine the punchlines. You test it again on Thursday. And then, a year later, you scale it up to the special.
That is the perfect analogy for scientific advertising. You let the small crowd tell you the truth before you pay for the big stage. And the absolute rule here is never, ever argue around a boardroom table about what people want. Boardrooms are dangerous echo chambers.
They really are.
They are filled with executives who make high salaries and are completely disconnected from the daily financial anxieties of their actual consumers. Stop debating. Run a small, inexpensive test, get real data, and let the consumer's wallet make the final decision.
Okay, so we have laid out these incredibly potent tactical concepts. Kill the fine writing, Offer radical unselfish service. Use specific verifiable facts. Sort your crowd with targeted headlines. Use positive psychology to show the friendshine. And test every single variable.
Yep, that's the toolkit.
But I want to elevate the conversation now. How do these individual tactical ideas actually fit together? What is the underlying philosophical worldview driving Claude Hopkins?
That is the most important question to ask, because if you just view these as a grab bag of isolated marketing hacks, you miss the genius of the system. The overarching philosophy of Hopkins forms a deeply coherent worldview based on intense empathy and profound respect for the common people.
Empathy.
Yes. He believed that the greatest danger in any business, the thing that will destroy a company faster than anything else, is ego. Specifically, the vanity of the executive who project their own sophisticated, wealthy tastes onto the masses.
There's a story from his childhood early in the sources that I think perfectly encapsulates this worldview and why he distrusted the elite opinion. Let's talk about the Alan Pinkerton detective book.
Yes, it's a defining moment in his life. When Claude was a young boy, desperately trying to make money, he invested in a stack of Alan Pinkerton detective books to sell door to door. Now, Pinkerton was a famous, gritty detective, a hero to working-class boys at the time. But Claude's mother, being conservative, told him he needed to go to the mayor of the town first. She believed that if he could get an endorsement from the most wealthy, respected man in town, everyone else would buy the book.
So young Claude obediently goes to the mayor's office.
He goes to the mayor, who is a wealthy, deeply religious, highly educated man. The mayor takes one look at this gritty detective book, throws it back in Claude's lap, and essentially kicks him out of the office.
Oh, man.
He tells Claude that a book about criminals and violence has no place in polite society and that he shouldn't be peddling trash. Claude is absolutely crushed. He thinks his entire investment is ruined because the most important man in town hated the product.
But his mother gives him a second piece of advice.
Right. She tells him to go down to the local big store and talk to the blue-collar workers. So he goes down there, feeling defeated. He shows the book to the manager. The manager's eyes light up. He buys a copy immediately, walks Claude around the office, and Claude sells 6 more copies to the staff in a matter of minutes. He sold out his entire inventory to the working class almost instantly.
It's an incredible story of market segmentation. What was the core lesson Hopkins took from that rejection by the mayor and the embrace by the workers?
The lesson became his guiding mantra. Never judge humanity by yourself. Never assume that the things you like, the things that appeal to your specific demographic or your income bracket, will be embraced by the vast majority of the public.
Right.
And congruently, never assume that because you hate something, the public will hate it too. The ideas in scientific advertising fit together perfectly because they systematically remove the ego of the seller from the equation.
Oh, I see it now. The entire system is an ego removal machine. You use scientific testing to remove your own biases and boardroom guesses. You use specific facts to remove your own natural tendency to hype and boast about your own company. You use unselfish service to force yourself to stop focusing on your need for a profit and focus entirely on the buyer's needs. It is a system designed to mathematically force empathy onto the marketer.
That is exactly what it is. And that is precisely why he deeply distrusted highly polished, college-educated copywriters who wanted to sit in high-rise offices and show off their literary flair.
He didn't want the artists.
No, he preferred hiring people who had actually knocked on doors, who had struggled, who understood on a visceral level how hard it was for a working mother to part with a dollar. He believed you had to speak to people simply, directly, and with profound respect for the gravity of their hard-earned money.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's be incredibly direct with you, the listener. We've spent this time dissecting a philosophy from the 1920s. Who actually needs to read these books today?
These books are explicitly for anyone whose success depends on persuading other human beings to take a specific action. It is for the modern digital marketer who is exhausted from wasting client ad spend on vanity metrics like impressions or brand awareness and wants to get back to measurable, hard ROI. It is for the solo entrepreneur designing a landing page who desperately needs it to convert visitors into buyers to make payroll.
It's for the YouTube creator, like we said earlier, your thumbnail and title. That is exactly what Hopkins means by a headline. If you don't sort your crowd, your video dies. It's for the copywriter who wants to understand the deep psychological roots of their craft, rather than just copying the latest trendy templates floating around Twitter.
However, I think it is equally important to note who this material is not for.
Okay, who is it not for?
It is not for people who want to use advertising as a corporate vanity project, a way to win Con Leon awards, or an avant-garde Anton Earth's installation. It is for, as Hopkins would bluntly say, result getters.
Claude Hopkins worked 16-hour days for decades. He essentially crammed 70 years of high-intensity, high-stakes experience into a 35-year career. The sheer density of wisdom in his work is staggering. We have covered the macro principles today, the worldview, the frameworks, but the books themselves are filled with hundreds of micro case studies on everything from selling car tires to baking powder to sewing machines.
And reflecting on all that density leads me to a final, slightly provocative thought for you to mull over as we finish.
Oh, let's hear it.
We've spent this entire time talking about applying the principles of scientific advertising to business, to marketing funnels, to copywriting. But what if we applied this exact same framework to our own personal lives?
Oh, I like where this is going. How do you mean?
Well, think about it. How many of our personal arguments, our career choices, or our major financial decisions are based on the internal equivalent of boardroom guessing?
A lot of them, probably.
We sit in our own mental echo chambers, projecting our biases, assuming we know exactly how our spouse will react, or exactly how a career change will pan out. We rely on hype and hope. What if instead we adopted Hopkins' humility? What if we ran small, measurable tests in our own lives? What if we stopped acting on assumption and started tracking the actual emotional and practical returns of our daily habits?
That is a fascinating challenge. Stop guessing, start testing, even with your own life choices. Don't assume you know what the market of your own life wants. Run the test. Now, as deep as we went today, we truly only scratched the surface of the thousands of specific tests, failures, and insights Hopkins recorded in these texts.
Absolutely. If you found yourself nodding along today, if you felt this framework of unselfish service, specificity, and testing could genuinely help your business, your content creation, or just your general mindset about how influence works, there's a natural next step for you to take.
We have a complete audio course available several hours covering every single chapter of Hopkins' work in microscopic depth. It includes detailed explanations of the psychology, far more historical case studies than we could possibly fit here, and highly actionable takeaways for applying each one to modern digital platforms. If you want to go deeper and really master the physics of persuasion, check the link in the description.
It is a fantastic resource for anyone who's finally ready to stop guessing and start knowing.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the foundations of modern influence. Next time you are looking at your complex analytics dashboard or trying to write an email that actually converts, just remember you might be flying the modern spacecraft, but Claude Hopkins wrote the laws of gravity you're navigating by. Catch you on the next deep dive.
What you just listened was the beginning of a full audio, way longer, explaining every single chapter of the book. If you would like to keep listening to the end and access to the full audio, you can access it with the link down below in the description and in the pinned comment.